You can arrange two students to give feedback. Bala, someone there, can you see the poem on the screen? There's a Word document. Can you see?
Yeah, yes.
Yes, ma'am.
Oh,
Yes, Preeti. Yeah, I can see Preeti.
okay, okay. I think we can ask Sumati to start. Sumati, are you there? Sumati? Friends, please mute. If you're not the speaker, I make Bala, I make you co-host. Because
Preeti?
you have a PowerPoint. Do you have a PowerPoint, Bala?
Yes, Preeti.
So I have to make you co-host. Sadhana has not come. Sadhana. Chairperson has come.
Good afternoon. Very good afternoon, all.
Good afternoon, Sumati. Good afternoon.
The subject of session 3, New Vistas for Research in English. And this is framed with the concepts with post-colonial studies, cultural studies, Indian writing in English, and translation studies. And now the session will be taken by Dr. Maria Preeti Srinivasan ma'am, head of the department.
Sumati, not me. First Bala, then Sadhana, and I will be the last speaker.
Okay. Yes, now we have time to enjoy the cultural studies. And Professor Dr. Balambige ma'am, a promising person, has been here to cherish about the subject. He has a passion for teaching around 21 years, and we can enjoy her teaching. Ma'am's insight upon every subject, whether American literature, feminist criticism, post-colonial studies, whatever it is quite unfathomable. Her insight is unfathomable. May I request now Dr. Balambige ma'am to rock the session?
A warm good afternoon to everyone present here. I really feel very proud. I consider this as a privilege, actually, an opportunity for me given by our college. I thank our respected principal and our head of the department, Dr. Maria Preeti Srinivasan, for having given me this wonderful opportunity to do the cultural studies in this orientation program for the postgraduates. Today, I'm going to just briefly introduce this discipline, cultural studies. Now, culture is quite very familiar term to all of us. It is a concrete whole of the various belief systems, values, and put together, we know, I mean, the customs, habits, everything put together you call, you bring in as culture. But why was this cultural discipline of study? That's a big question, and that has been much debated over the past 60 or 70 years. First, let me define what cultural studies is. Cultural. Can you see the video? You can see. Preeti, can you see this? Slides.
No, not yet. Not yet.
Not yet, Preeti.
Not yet.
I don't know, Preeti, I don't know what the problem is, but let me do
If
it
you
without
can,
the PowerPoint.
okay, you can send it to me. I can share, or you can do without it,
Yeah,
whichever.
I can do without it, Preeti. Later on, I'll
Fine,
share
fine.
it. Okay. Yeah, you can. Cultural studies, you know that it is research and study that has emerged during the middle of the century. What this cultural studies is, it is chiefly concerned with the role of the social institutions in the shaping of culture. Though it talks about the daily experiences and the social relationships in our every day-to-day life, but specifically it relates to wider systems of power operating structures through social phenomena, like you have various aspects like class structure, nation formation, race, ethnicity, gender issues, and so many aspects it includes. Now, first, let me brief you about why this cultural studies emerged as a separate discipline of study. The previous century, in the 19th century, during the Victorian era, when Matthew Arnold wrote about culture and he strongly believed that is culture is a process towards perfection, towards knowledge, the dissemination of knowledge, and the preservation of values, the value system, and everything. That is widely prevalent only with the a few elite people. So he believed that those elite group who are familiar with this canonical texts and all the other literary writings, and they are more exposed to this cultural values, and they alone can preserve this particular, uh, I mean, cultural values. So when he was so particular about this minority culture in the culture is confined only with this elite group, this kind of elitism and the exclusive non-democratic attitude disturbed some of the people during this post-war period. I would just introduce who they are. And not only Matthew Arnold, and after Matthew Arnold, you have F.R. Lewis. And he also believed that the low culture are supposed to the high culture, supposed to the elite culture. It brings only the decline of the cultural values in the system, in the state. So he also oriented the cultural values to be confined only to this my high culture. And he had a further belief that it should be propagated through the educational system. So, drawn from these two ideas only, during the middle of the 20th century, some four pioneers, you can call them founding fathers of cultural studies. They are Richard Hoggetts, and then Raymond Williams, and then comes E.P. Thompson and Stuart Hall. And the four of them, and they thought that all of them, they shared one common concept. They wanted to defy this high culture or this elite culture. So, but they had their different dimension of study about this cultural studies. Raymond Williams, you know that he also, he was the first one. I'm sorry, Richard Hoggetts was the first one to lay the foundation for this cultural studies as a separate academic discipline of study. And he wanted to popularize the popular culture as against the high culture. And not only that, he wanted to, because he worked as a professor in the Birmingham University, teaching the working class students. He knew the value of those cultural system, and he wanted to advocate those. He didn't call that as a low culture. He called that as a mass culture or a popular culture. And following him, we have Raymond Williams, who brought in with, who echoed the same idea, but with a different concept. And he introduced the concept of cultural materialism. And any canonical text could be analyzed or perceived from the perspective of materialistic perspective. And that was the next, pioneer, that is Raymond Williams. Then comes E.P. Thompson. He studied the history of the working class, and he highlighted and foregrounded the cultural values that was prevalent in the working class people. And very much we have, Stuart Hall. I hope all of you know Stuart Hall. And he's, chief exponent of this particular school of thought. And he was also a sociologist who contributed significantly to the theoretical setup of cultural studies. He was deeply influenced by Gramsci's notion of hegemony and analyzed cultural practices from the point of view of the power, subjectivity, identity. And after these founding fathers, and cultural studies, became a very interesting field of study, gained a significance with the various theories, cultural theories relating their particular, school of thought in relation to culture. And we all know that culture as such it is not a individual entity, and it is a cross-disciplinary, it is an interdisciplinary field of study. And so we have various schools of thought that we are quite familiar with the various schools of thought, like thoughts like Marxism, feminism, post-colonialism, post-structuralism, post-modernism, psychoanalysis, and also the popular culture. And all these field of study, they related their particular theoretical, a school of thought in relation to culture. So cultural studies gained its deep root with the various theories. And I'm sure, and all of us are familiar with the various theories, like we have Antonio Gramsci, Michel Foucault, Roland Barthes, and Jacques Derrida, uh, Habermas, Frederick Jameson, and Jean Baudrillard, Louis Althusser, Judith Butler, and then Karl Marx, Friedrich Engels, Sigmund Freud. And their contributions to the cultural study was something great. And several researchers now recently, and whatever cultural studies, students, researchers are doing, and they take some or other, one aspect of this cultural theory, and then they explore upon that. And we come to know that, and what is the significance, why should this cultural studies be taken up so seriously, or what does it aim at? It aims at mainly subverting the high culture and bringing an integration of the high culture, the low culture with the high culture. They wanted to popularize the popular culture. I think 1 second, excuse me, Preeti, can you see the PowerPoint, presentation? Can you see this, Preeti? Excuse me. Can you see the slide?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. We can see the slide.
Yeah.
I am presenting or you're presenting?
You can present, Preeti.
I'm presenting. Can you see roots of cultural studies?
Yeah, roots of cultural studies. Yes, Preeti, can go to the
Yeah,
next one.
okay. Yeah, okay.
Thank you, Preeti. Now, we have to see why should so much of, discussion go on with this cultural studies, and what does it aim at? The main reason of these cultural theories, the various theories mainly is to subvert the distinction between the high and the low culture. Not only that, they wanted to empower the minority culture and also bring the values to the forefront. That was the third aim of this cultural study, is to emphasize the cultural pluralism and egalitarianism. And also during the study, and when you take a cultural, when you take a text, and when you just make a research upon it, you can specify what ideology is actually operating in a particular given cultural artifact. Ideology is not in the sense of a set of beliefs. It's a kind, the set of discourse or the set of images that is presented. The next aim of this cultural studies is to assert the value of popular culture. And finally, the most important aspect of this cultural studies, and students, whatever research that you're going to do, as Dr. Shivaraman sir said, and you know that, take your text, give importance to the text and not to the theory first, and then enjoy the text, and whatever cultural aspects that you are able to discern in that, that should sensitize you. And so this the cultural study aim was to sensitize the common people, not only this the mass culture group of people, cultural group of people, and also the high culture people. And now when you take a particular text and how to do the analysis or the research, that is very important. When you take in a particular text, you can go for a textual approach. When I say that it is a textual approach, you can do the interpretation, whether it is a reader response or whatever, how you interpret. And what are the how culture is represented to you, that you can see and you can interpret and make an analysis of that. And then the second is content analysis is which is a predominant cultural practices that you find in the content, and that actually gives meaning. And the culture is actually, it adds meaning in our social institution. That is very important. The next one is discourse analysis, and what kind of presentation or the representation has been done in the cultural studies that you can analyze. And also you can also look into various other things like media analysis. Okay, how culture is represented in media. Media, you find that nowadays, actually this cultural studies also, because media was in favor of a high elite group, and they were distorting the cultural practices. And in order to challenge this media, I mean the culture that was present in media, that was also another reason why this pioneers, they started cultural studies as a separate field of study. Then you can go for a historical approach, and also ethnographical study, and how race, ethnicity play a major role in analyzing a culture of a particular uh, text. And now next, lastly, I'll tell you what you mean by text. And because culture is directly related to the lives and the experiences, without that, because experiences of the individual that form the society. So the experience and the stories that is related, how it is related, that also should be highlighted in this research work. Next, I would like to, because we are short of time, now I would like to um, Preeti, yeah, I want to talk to you about when I told you why this the aim was to subvert this high culture and to popularize the popular culture. Now I want to discuss what is cultural production you mean by. Now, do the popular, I mean, the mass, the people of the, I mean, the common people, do they have their own cultural production? And of course, they have. So, what is cultural production? Cultural production, it includes the cultural texts, both the literary and the non-literary texts, but it doesn't mean the canonical literary texts alone. That alone is not a representation of the culture. You can't call that as a cultural production. It is inclusive of various other things that that actually accumulate into this popular culture. You can have an analysis of a cultural, make a cultural analysis of the various cultural practices, how it is represented in films, and then music, then sports, fashion, folklore, and the various advertisements now you have. When I talk about all these things, you know that culture is not static. It keeps changing. Now, for example, in the advertisement now, how earlier we had fair and lovely advertisement, but now how the perception changes. Now they say it is glow and lovely. So, you know that these are the various cultural productions that you can look into. For the research point of view, students, I would say that you can take up I mean, more than this, of course, you can very well take up any literary text, and you can also make a study on film, the cultural aspects that is represented in a film or in a TV, or how music, how culture, what kind of culture is represented in music and sports, fashion, and all the other things that I mentioned. And now I have a few books for, reference, which you can just go through, that will help you for your studies. And like Theodore Adorn's The Culture Industry, and Simon During's The Cultural Studies. We have in our library, we have that book. And Michael Ryan's Cultural Studies, and Raymond Williams' Culture Culture. Now, let me just briefly explain to you how you can orient, because you're going to have a dissertation in the second year. You have to do a research study, as Shivaraman sir said, and don't go for theory first. Okay, the cultural studies encompasses, many theories, diverse theories, because it is interdisciplinary. And don't go for any theory. First, take a book that you really relish. That is more important. And find out each and every book, you will have some or other kind of cultural representations that is made in that particular book. And because culture and society are interrelated, and you find the social world expressed in all the text, whatever it is, whether it is a folklore or music, and everything is a kind of representation of some cultural habits or practices or rituals or something. So first, you can just, if you are going to take a text, you enjoy that. Or if you want to go for all the other text, any other cultural production, whatever it is, you can just take that and you can just find out how culture is represented there. And then what you find unique in that, and you can relate. After that, you can think of or the cultural text too, that you can think of. And now, to tell you, my PhD thesis was on culture and identity, culture and gender, and identity issues relating to Maxine Hong-Kingston's works. And you know that you can also think about how in a diaspora, how cultural crisis and identity comes, that you can think of. Because you know that in a country like America, you have multiculturalism. It is not a single culture they follow. They have a melting pot culture. So whether they have their own mosaic culture or a melting pot culture, and that also you can think of. And how that culture is represented in that in a multicultural text, you can reread that. In my reading, what I found is the cultural practices were represented um, by my writer Maxine, a Chinese American writer, and how she was bombarded by both her home culture and the host culture, though she was born and brought up there, and whether she fully agreed to the home culture and the host culture, how the cultural conflicts gave her a hyphenated identity of American woman. So you have the gender issue also there. So you can analyze various aspects like that. There, what I found is how she actually she challenged her home culture, like the aspect of foot binding. To tell you one small example, foot binding. Foot binding was a cultural practice that was practiced till the middle of the 20th century in China. How people were, women's feet were bound, broken actually. When they were just 5 or 6 years itself, the feet will be broken and then tied for a period of nearly 6 to 8 months. And then how that the size of the foot was reduced just to for men to derive pleasure, and it's a kind of subordination and exploitation of women they were subjected to. But how, when Maxine Hong presented in her work, how I found that how she presents on island where the man goes, there is a no man's land, how that man is slowly he has been subjected to this foot binding, how she defies that. So like that, how the culture is challenged, and that you can identify in your particular work and do that. Now I have given you, apart from the text for reference, and the recently research works, I have just a few samples I have taken to you, and it is Last Without a Connection, Analyzing Netflix Maniac in the Digital Streaming Age by Eric Bruce, and Concerning Virtual Reality and Corporealized Media, Exploring Video Game Aesthetics and Phenomenology by Matthew Morales. Failing to Move Forward, Journalism, Media and Athlete in David Finch's Nicholas Orlando, and Digital Integration, the research being done by Boshu, and Sopranos Experience by and Benjamin Weidler. So now these are some of the samples that I have given. Now you can take up any cultural practices that you see in our everyday life. Okay, just some folklore or any music or whatever it is, you can even take that for say, a research work and then relate that to a theoretical concept. So I think this because we are short of time, we are given very few minutes to speak upon, and I think this introduction about the cultural studies would help you to at least to some extent. I believe. Now, I thank once again everyone, the respected principal, and the department has given me an opportunity to present this. Thank you, all of you.
Sumati ma'am, please unmute your mic, ma'am.
Sumati madam, we haven't introduced our chairperson. We should have done that at the outset. So could you please do that? Ms. Ayuja has been silent listener. Wait, I'll unmute her. Ask to unmute her.
Thank you so much, Balambige ma'am. Sure, our students would have assimilated the methodology. Of course, this is a new concept for them. Therefore, they would understand the components, the purpose, and various aspects of cultural studies. And definitely, by this time, students would have been unveiled about the symbiotic relationship between culture and the human lives. Thank you so much. Now, the session is the session going to focus on Dr. Sadhana ma'am's mind-blowing lecture. She is an expertise in translation studies and Indian writing in English. To her credits, Dr. Sadhana ma'am has translated books from English to Tamil for FedCart, Federation of Consumer Organization, Tamil Nadu. Adding to this, it is a thing of elation that Professor Sadhana has translated political speeches of Dravidian politics from Tamil to English for Miss Ingrid Norman, a PhD scholar of Uppsala University, Sweden. And she is specialized in Canadian literature also. Hence, it is a pleasure now to call upon Dr. Sadhana ma'am to share her cup of tea with us.
Thank you, Sumati ma'am. Good evening to my colleagues and students present here. May I ask Sangeeta to present my PPT because there's some problem with my sharing here.
Yes.
Yeah, thank you, Sangeeta. Thank you. So it is not within the scope of this session to
Oh, wait, I have to unmute her. I
Yes,
have to give her co-host.
Am I audible, ma'am?
Yes, Sangeeta.
So since it is not well within the scope of the session to give a comprehensive account of the topic, it's going to be a selective overview, a kind of quickly tracing the history of Indian literatures in translation, especially Indian literatures in English translation. That's what we're going to see now. Um,
Is the screen visible, ma'am?
yeah, it's visible.
Yes, visible to me. Yes.
Yeah. We'll go to the second slide. Yeah. So before going into the topic, I think let us let the students be aware of these two Indian writing in English as well as Indian literatures in English translations. So usually there will be a confusion uh, among the beginners. Indian writing in English, to make it fast, it is the authors writing English, whereas rather Indian authors writing in English. When you talk about this Indian literature in English translation, the writings of the authors, which is written in vernacular, will be translated to into English. Okay, so coming to the third slide, where we are just beginning with the reasons. I mean, while tracing the history of this translation in English in India, I have just focused on three major points. The first one is the foundation for this literature, Indian literatures translated into English, was laid by the British. So I've just given few reasons why British have started with this translation, because as it is said, it is began as an administrative tool. A reason why is now we can always say the foundation. Sorry, yeah. Translation, why? Because it's considered as an administrative tool. When they landed up in India, because as East India Company, they never expected a vast land with too many languages. So it became important for them to govern the country when with the languages. So wanting to know more about the languages, to become familiar with the political and social system of the country. Once again, let me just stop. Sorry. Yeah. Just it's because they had to govern the country politically and sociologically. They had to go through the they had to go through the languages, and so they had to translate the Indian languages for a better governance in India. That's how I think they started the translation. And to talk about this Orientalistic way of administration, where we are shown this author Warren Hastings. He wanted to know the country. Can we go to the He wanted to know the country through the languages, because he thought language not only just was meant for communication. It knowing the Indian languages for him is to know the culture and tradition of India. And so he went into a study of Hindu laws through the eyes of the Brahmins who were in the apex of the society, who knew Sanskrit also, because most of the literatures were then in Sanskrit according to them. And so that was also done. Though after the translation, though whole England felt the laws were inappropriate or unproportionate or incoherent, but still the translation was done from Sanskrit to English. And this to study the Muslim laws, they were actually uh, studying both the laws, because they first established their kingdom in Bengal, and because Bengal was dominated by the Muslim population, they had to study both the laws to see, uh, I mean, no, to give a better governance, and that's how we came to know that the Indian criminal justice system was based on the Muslim laws, and we had to have a different civil law code because both were Hindu and Muslims were governed by different civil laws, and it started from there. And because of uh, this translation, they were able to get to the culture and society and tradition of these two different sects of people. And these are the major reasons why translation in India had started after the British had come. Okay, and the second reason for the translation, to go ahead, can we go to the next slide?
Yes.
Yeah. So where after this, the translation was done by the Indians themselves under the guidance of the British. The act of translating into one's culture into alien language was done by the done by the Indians. And this Orient, the word Orient was translated, the ideology Orient was translated and made available for a self definition. What do you mean by that is, I mean, no, while translating from Sanskrit and Persian and Arabic to English, uh, we come to know that many ancient Indian texts were translated and served as authentic account of India, because it was made available not only for the Europeans but also to the Indians, to show that that is their identity. And that's one of the reasons the translation was done after this. And continuing with this, we can see uh, a particular group of people went to serve the British, especially the people who knew Sanskrit, the Brahmins especially. They were helping the British to translate the Sanskrit literature, mainly to construct an image of India, either through Manusmriti, translating Manusmriti, and translating other scripts of Hinduism. That's one reason. Whereas another group, larger group, they went for other types of translations. That's a reason why we can see after this the translation moved from Sanskrit and Persian and Arabic to the vernacular. So people who wrote in other languages, languages were also trying to translate into English. That was also happening after this. And coming to the third point, where the translation was done into English by the British again. So first we saw the translation was done as a governance tool, administrative tool. Next, we saw translation was done into English by the Indians. And next, we're going to see translation was done into English by the British themselves after learning the languages in India, especially the major languages then, like Arabic, Persian, because before Sanskrit, the administrative language was Persian, because the British had to communicate with the Nawabs at the spot. And then came Sanskrit and then Arabic, and then they were learning in Tamil also. Can we go to the next slide, Sangeeta? Yeah. So where we can see the translation were taken up by the British for various reasons. One, literary. They were very, after learning these languages, they try to read all these translations. I'm sorry. Try to read all these works in original. So taken away by the beauty of all the languages and the literature, they wanted to translate it on their own. Also, not for the literary purposes, for the historical purposes also, they started to learn the language on their own and translate it into English. So now translation were done by the British themselves, the third phase. Okay, here we can see major works like Shakuntala, Ramayana, Mahabharata were translated because they started to see these works somewhere similar to Iliad and Odyssey. I mean, yeah, Iliad and Odyssey. And so they, I mean, no, were taken by the similarities. They wanted to translate all these work. And after this came a person called Macaulay, who felt that the people who came before these people, I mean, before Macaulay, were glorifying Sanskrit and Hinduism a lot. That's how he felt. When he came to give a total report about India and its historical past and literary past, that's how he felt. But he personally felt Sanskrit and Persian, languages were lacking in kind of, scientific thoughts and aesthetic beauty. And while talking about this scientific thought and aesthetic beauty, I need to, I think I can take a small digression, talking about the translation also, a few aspects of translation, because I cannot go in detail about the translation studies. Coming to the next slide, we can see there is another person, Edward Fitzgerald, who translated Omar Khayyam's Rubaiyat into English. So, having learned Persian, he translated it into English. Sangeeta, we can show that particular quatrains he had translated from Persian to English. Yeah, I think this is the poem is full of quatrains, and this is, I think, a ninth or 10th quatrain in the poem, which he translated here. Why I want to bring in Fitzgerald's translation here, because Macaulay and Fitzgerald were almost of the same view. Okay, we always had an opinion that Persians are very good poets, and there are a lot more to learn from Persian history, whereas no. English people, especially Fitzgerald and people like Macaulay, they had this superior culture. They spoke of their superior culture. And they felt English was more superior than Persian and other languages, Eastern languages. And so when Fitzgerald translated Rubaiyat, he had a little consideration for the original. He actually, for him, translating a Persian text was nothing more than a gentleman's pastime. And so he said it is an amusement to take liberty with Persian, whom he considered no poets at all. That's a problem with Fitzgerald. But still, everybody knows that Omar Khayyam's Rubaiyat became popular only after Fitzgerald's translation into English. But still, he took a lot of liberty in playing with the original work, and he had brought out his own translation looking down upon Persian. So why I'm telling you now is this was again translated. This English version of Fitzgerald was translated into Tamil also by Bharatidasan. You can see how Bharatidasan did not actually exactly translate. He transcreated this version of Omar Khayyam's poetry, where we can see, if you have read this 4 lines, we can go to the next slide, where you can see the translation of Bharatidasan's the same quatrains. So when it came, can we go back to the previous one, Fitzgerald's? Here with a loaf of bread beneath a bough, a flask of wine, and all these words have been taken and created into the culture, according to the culture, and adapted according to the culture. That's what you can see in this translation, where he has written, வெயிலுக்கேற்ற நிழலுண்டு வீசும் தென்றல் காற்றுண்டு கையில் கம்பன் கவியுண்டு கலசம் நிறைய மது உண்டு தெய்வகீதம் பல உண்டு தெரிந்து பாட நீயுண்டு வையம் தருமோ இவ்வனமின்றி வாழும் சொர்க்கம் வேறுண்டோ. So the quatrains have been changed. Okay, this is written in a different meter, whereas that is written in a different meter. But in this case, we can say Bharatidasan has not done injustice to the original. In fact, his attitude is not similar to Fitzgerald's attitude, looking down upon Persian. In spite, we can say in his case, he allowed a play of difference, that's all. to fit that particular poem into his own culture, into his own linguistic meters and all those things. That's how we can see. So taking a small diversion from this translation, why I wanted to tell you this is the people who translated from one language to the other had this ideology also, looking down upon the other language and taking the liberty of translating in a according to their whims and fancies, which was very well, no, Fitzgerald's translation of Omar Khayyam's Rubaiyat was very well welcomed by the Western readers, and it was made popular also. And even Omar Khayyam was introduced into the Western world only through Fitzgerald. That's why I wanted to tell you this, uh, because this is one aspect of translation that we have to take care of. Going to the next slide, slowly. So these are the three phases where Indian literatures were translated into English for administrative tools and for their own other reasons. So coming back to this Indian writing in English, to introduce to you, it was written most widely in the post-independent period. In the pre-independent period, they were actually uh, influenced much by the British people, and they were not allowed to write on their own, and they were even wrote in the style of the English themselves, and it was especially written by the Indian elites, who had better connections with the English people. And when it comes to the other, when talking about the next point, when they were compelled to imitate, because the literature or history was shown only through the eyes of the English, and so they were compelled to imitate British. But later, they indulge in the recovery of the past. When you read the poems of the later writers, you can see the nationalistic conscience running in the later part of the 19th century. And of late, this Indian literature in translation are acquiring high visibility. Uh, you know, the reasons are varied. Coming to the next slide, we can understand why and how. It all depends on who wants to talk and what is to be discussed. And so we can study translations in the context of these aspects: post colonialism, feminism, cultural studies, history, and linguistics, because the influx of the text from the ex-colonized, you know, in English or translated into English was there. And so when you see it in the context of either post-colonialism or feminism, or even in cultural studies, they have raised the question about the cultural representation of the subjugated. For example, now if you see Gayatri Spivak or Mahashweta Devi, they will show all these. The ideologies are very much represented in these authors, and also history was written from the point of view of the oppressed and translated into the to the world. You see, for example, if you read the Dalit literatures like Shodharman's Kugai or Gunashekharan's Touch, you can see the uh, the reason why the literature is written, to show to the world what was omitted, and to show to the world what was you know uh, which was once a dark side of the literature is now brought out to the world. So at this juncture, we may have the question like why these vernacular literatures are translated into English. There are two reasons I can say. One, to reach out to those people who don't read in their mother tongues. Most of us don't read in our mother tongues, mother language. No, and for them, mainly to bring a knowledge about the past and the history. It is written in English. And two, to reach out to the world out there, the Western world, to alter or arrange or rearrange their outlook about the Orient, to reread the literatures. Same is happening in African literature also. And so that's the reason why, these are the two reasons why the vernacular literature is translated into English, especially in the last tickets. I think that is the reason, and so yeah. So with that, I just stop my presentation here, and looking forward for a comprehensive discussion on this topic in the classrooms. I would like to thank our head of the department, Dr. Maria Preeti Srinivasan, and my colleagues for the opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Sadhana. The speech?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
The speech? The speech that highlights the values of translation. It helps to enjoy the essence of the books written in various languages in various corners of the world. Highly significant. Sure, the students would have apprehended with the idea to show their interest in translation studies also. Thank you. Now,
Sumati madam, we can make the introduction to me very brief.
okay. By the way, I would like to know whether Dr. Sayuja Shankar ma'am has come.
She has come. She has come. Can you introduce her, please?
Yes, yes. To know about a very enthusiastic professor, Dr. Sayuja Shankar, and she is an assistant professor of English, Salamar's College. She has passion in creative writing, speculative fiction, and with the publication of many stories under the title of A Symphony of Chance Encounters. She is known for poems also, and she published under the title A Fireplay in the City. We are all very happy to have you, ma'am, here and to enjoy your review.
Thank you, ma'am.
Welcome, ma'am, to the session. Now, the session is going to be a full by Dr. Maria Preeti Srinivasan, ma'am, head of the department, Queen Mary's College, Department of English, Queen Mary's College.
Thank you, Mrs. Sumati, and thank you, dear friends, for staying with us for a very long time. And I do thank the chairpersons, Dr. Ramakrishnan and Dr. Sivaraman. They have served as pace setters, and also the other resource persons, and especially connected to my area, post-colonialism, which I'm going to present now, is the work done by Dr. Balambigai on cultural studies and Dr. Sadhana on translation, Dr. Vinita on gender studies. And so to save time, I am grateful that the muse met me and I was able to put my ideas together in a poem on post-colonialism. I'll read the poem to you, and then I can share the concepts or the words, the new vocabulary that is related to post-colonialism. Post-colonialism is like an endless poem, and the post is meant to indicate what happened after. The field of study is about colonialism as well, about imperial authority, and about knowledge that makes for power. So while it interrogates colonization, post-colonialism celebrates resistance, acknowledges hybridity, examines historiography, decenters imperialism, foregrounds difference, decolonizes discourse, walks hand in hand with post-structuralism and postmodernism, empowers the other who is on the margins, makes silence and absence a presence, vows to dismantle racism, patriarchy, and the parochial, doesn't succumb to the creation of binaries, black and white, settler and native, center and margin, Euro and ethno, master and slave, man and woman. Postcolonialism navigates discourse by signposts like hegemony, subalternity, abrogation, and appropriation. Truly pluralistic, with its emphasis on literatures and Englishes. Postcolonialism is, in essence, a liberating intellectual engagement. So, within the time frame that we have, let us analyze this poem or go through this poem and try to understand what is being said here. When we say post, it means after. Like you have these advertisements about, weight loss, where you have the photograph before and after, right? So you see a person totally different from what he was. A person with a big tummy has a flat stomach. A flabby person becomes very thin and slim. Now, post colonialism cannot be seen as after colonialism, just after colonialism. That idea doesn't work out here because it interrogates colonialism. It is like, you know, uh, what we call post-mortem. After somebody dies, the police do a post-mortem and see how the person died. So in the same way, we interrogate colonialism and try to see what enslaved us, right? So post-colonial studies interrogates colonization. How did colonization take place? And when we study how colonization takes place, we study how power works, how were we overpowered, right? And one of the ways in which we were overpowered was because of knowledge. Now, Sadhana Madam was talking about how the British undertook translation. They were so interested in learning Indian languages. For example, I can tell you about a book called the Malabar Manual, which I referred to in my research, and it is there in the rare book section in Connemara Library. In this Malabar Manual, almost even a blade of grass in the Malabar region is documented. Okay, so this William Logan, who wrote Malabar Manual, he has written about the entire region, the flora, fauna, the rivers, the communities, and the difference between one community and another. And it's very, it's structured about, how they receive a guest, that is described, how every community receives him, the reception of the guest, then the food habits, how women are treated in the society. So this kind of documentation. So it is, how this is how knowledge is used to subjugate. Okay, in military terms, we use the word reconnaissance, RECONNAISANCE. So this kind of study that the British did of the land and the cultures, it was a kind of reconnaissance. And this is something that we see in all the places that they have colonized, whether it be India or Africa or Australia. And very central to this is the navigation of rivers. So taking the course of the river right through, and you know that human settlement is on rivers. So they, like this, they navigated rivers and met up with communities, looked at explored territory, and this research was so very useful to them in their colonization. In your history of English literature and social history of England, you would have learned about the navigation, about how they of their prowess on the sea, and so how that their ability to navigate, to circumnavigate the globe, to use the compass and to find places and to map. Cartography is also a very important part of colonization, mapping, cartography. So they had all these skills, apart from which they had uh, ammunition and arms and even physical power. So that is about knowledge and power. So when we interrogate colonization, we look at how knowledge was converted to power. And this is what Foucault also uh, emphasizes. And that takes us into the area of post-structuralism. So post-colonialism celebrates resistance. So resistance you see in the nationalist struggles, the struggle for independence, and also the struggle of the resistance by indigenous communities. For example, in Australia, the Aboriginal people, they offered some kind of resistance there, which was not successful. And they continue to offer resistance. And how do they offer resistance? Well, it's when it comes to colonization. Uh, the colonized don't have the physical power, but now they are writing back. So you have a book by Bill Ashcroft, titled "The Empire Writes Back," and so writing is a form of resistance, right? And very often you find that activists also write. Hmm? And writing is a form of gaining a voice. So uh, the subjugated are voiceless, and when they write, they express themselves, and they seem to gain a voice on the page. We have the famous cliche, isn't it? The pen is mightier than the sword. So writing is a form of resistance. Um, Postcolonialism acknowledges hybridity. So we are very there is a kind of nostalgia for purity. We want to be pure Indian and purity of race. All these longings are there. But hybridity is unavoidable. And Bala Madam was talking to you about Chinese Americans. So, and she spoke about the hyphenated identity. So, this hybridity we see in the diaspora, in the immigrants who settle down. And it not only the immigrants, even the colonizers, there is a kind of hybridity that they also undergo. All right. So, it's a kind of, they have to get acclimatized in a way. So, William Dalrymple's White Mughals is about white men who preferred to stay in India, who liked Indian curries and Indian food and relationships with Indian women, and they somehow didn't feel like going back home. So there are many stories like this. So there also you see it is a case of hybridity. So they kind of internalize and the other's culture. And in the context of multiculturalism, you'll come across two terms, that is integration and assimilation. So multiculturalism is also a post-colonial outcome of the of the colonized societies, okay, where it is an outcome of people searching for better futures in unconquered territory. Historiography examines historiography. Historiography is the writing of history. They say that history is written by the conqueror, and how true that statement is. All right. So now we find that there are there's revisionist history, okay, which they call the perspective from below. So if it is Dalit history, right, Dalit historiography. And in your syllabus, you will come across one essay, Can the Subaltern Speak, by Gayatri Spivak. So that again is about history from below, historiography. When she asks, can the subaltern speak, she means, can the people who are really at the lowest rung, do they have a voice? Have they gained a voice? And when people who have this identity like Dalit or low caste, when they speak, is it their voice, or have they appropriated the voice of the the higher classes, the upper classes. So appropriation is also a very important term which we will come across later. Now, decolonizing discourse. Sadhana madam was talking about translation, and here I want to bring in what Ngugi Wa Thiong'o says in Decolonizing the Mind. Well, Ngugi Wa Thiong'o reached a point in his career where he said that he would not write in English because he felt that this literature from the colonies was like a delightful spread, wonderful food that was served up in a platter to the white consumer, to the white people. So this kind of attraction for the Orient was there in the Western mindset, and they wanted stories from the colonized countries. And definitely, they wanted the stories on their terms. They wanted something that uh, pleased their sensibilities and fitted in with their sense of the other. The other is the colonized people. So decolonizing, this Ngugi Wa Thiong'o says that our minds have to be decolonized. Why do we want to translate into English? Has anybody thought of translating Western classics into Indian languages? And I know that it happens a lot in Kerala, that a lot of writers, Western writers, are translated into Malayalam. So this kind of translation should also take place, not only the translation from the regional cultures from the colonized countries into English, which again serves the colonial purpose of knowledge about the other, okay, knowledge about the people they are going to colonize. So this translation of their writings into our languages is also something to be encouraged. And decolonizing, when we have this kind of cultural cringe, as it were, when we want to translate things into English so that we get a Western readership, we get a Western audience, it just shows that our minds are colonized. And we know that, well, post structuralism has a lot to do with the post war period of human civilization. And well, the World War II affected the Western world. It didn't affect India so much. We were probably part of their agenda, but the post structuralism and postmodernism also definitely intersect with post colonialism in their approaches. Um, in what ways, you may ask? Now, in case of my engagement, at least what I know about postmodernism, well, postmodernism is a period, beyond the modern period. And what I have seen of postmodern writing is that they gave importance to subjectivity about the first person narratives, all right, and also experimental writing. So when you experimental writing is subversive, not going in the traditional narrative, but using different ways of writing. Um, Sometimes that different way of writing would be like hyper reality, okay? Or, for example, this novel, John Fowles' French Lieutenant's Woman, that novel has 3 endings, okay? So you as a reader can choose any one ending, and it makes you sit up and realize that you have been drawn into a narrative. This narrative it is a construction of the author, and that person, and the novel could have ended in this way or another way, all right? And so that creates that kind of detachment or distancing, okay, between the reader and the text. And in with regard, and post structuralism emphasizes that meaning is postponed, or in other words, you know the in before post structuralism, the text was self contained. You had the author had the status of a deity. All right, he was a supreme deity reigning over the text. But now the text has come into the reader's hands. Yes, that's reader response theory and practical criticism. But post-structuralism talks about a meaning that is deferred. In the morning, Sir's our inaugural speaker, he said that with reference to text, people make their own meaning. All right, and a text could be misread. So about reading and misreading is a matter of subjectivity. So the way I read a text and the way you read a text may be different, and the meaning is not, there is no finality about meaning. Hmm? And this kind and post-structuralism walks hand in hand with post-colonialism, giving you that freedom for interpretation of the text. Well, structuralism is also about empowering people who are on the margins. All right. So, in the case of colonies like Canada, the Native American people, colonized people. So you have their voices. They used to be called Red Indians, but we call them now they are known as First Nations or Native Americans. Similarly, in Australia, Aboriginal people. And here in the so the other is the person who is marginalized. And here again, we see the relevance of post-structuralism and how it intersects and overlaps, or it is integral to post-colonialism when we speak of silence, absence, and presence. All right. So post-structuralism has heightened our consciousness towards silence. All right. So for example, if you have a narrative and the narrative is by characters from an upper caste society, from an upper class or upper caste, then you can raise the question: how is it that all the characters in this story are only from this community, and how is it that we do not have the a representation of the excluded peoples? So the silence, their silence speaks. So in the power structure, we find that there are many communities who have been silenced by the processes of colonization. The indigenous people have been silenced. And colonialism is not necessarily what the British have done to us. It is also about what we do to others. Man has colonized woman's space. Uh, Rich have colonized the space of the poor, upper caste of lower caste. And when this type of colonization takes place, when this type of suppression takes place, we know that those colonized people, those oppressed people are voiceless. We see so many stories on TV also about how the landlord has, he exercises so many atrocities. He is overbearing, he is cruel, but the worker in his field, okay, the laborer is voiceless, he cannot speak. So when you have a character in a drama, all right, you may have a landlord who says many sentences, all right, who speaks a lot, and you may have a laborer who is present on the stage but does not open his mouth. In that case, you see that silence is a presence. All right. So in the same way, absence also. If you have a play full of male characters, you may ask the question, where are the female characters? Are there no women? Is it a society without women? Right. So absence also speaks. And we know that uh, the hegemony or the domination of the white over black is and their suppression of the black people or the African American people, the Aboriginal people, is because of racism. So the white man felt that he was superior. They were the superior race, and they also referred to it as the white man's burden, that they were given this duty by God to colonize the darker races of the world. So patriarchy, post-colonialism, it tries to, it may not succeed, but it tries to dismantle racism. And patriarchy is this domination by the male. And we know that when you engage with research or a lot of reading in this area, you find that the parochial attitude uh, or the paternalistic attitude prevails. So the colonized, between the colonizer and the colonized, you will find in the rhetoric that is used, in the language that is used, the colonizer speaks of the colonized people as children, as ignorant children. So you see, it's a very paternalistic, parochial attitude. Next sentence, doesn't succumb to the creation of binaries. What is binaries? Just opposites. Now, actually creating opposites, it's like in terms of day-to-day politics, we call it polarization. Camp A, Camp B, they will never meet. East and West. Kipling said, East is East and West is West, and the twain shall never meet. So this kind of polarization, this kind of creation of binaries is a strategy to keep the people apart, all right? And for one to maintain their exclusive upper hand, and for the other to be the suppressed, dominated, oppressed peoples. So it doesn't, post-colonialism is such a wonderful area of study and empowering agency of empowerment, that it does it because of the things that it foregrounds, the processes, the strategies, the approaches, that it doesn't succumb to the creation of binaries. These binaries are black and white, settler native, center margin, Euro ethno, that is the European, ethno, the ethnic communities, the local communities, master and slave, man and woman. So you know that slave trade is also a very regretful and shameful part of the colonial enterprise. So how does post-colonialism interrogate, empower? Well, there are terms like hegemony, which means domination, subalternity, which speaks about the position of the lowest people who are voiceless, abrogation. Abrogation means rejection, appropriation. Now, see, appropriation is done by both the colonizer and the colonized. So, for example, we have adopted English. Okay, we have taken their language, and well, they have also appropriated. For example, you might have heard that turmeric is patented by America. So where does turmeric belong? Belongs to us. But they have appropriated this knowledge, this cultural knowledge. So appropriation of cultural knowledges is a very, very major theft, one can say, a theft of knowledge and empowering themselves or strengthening their position by appropriating knowledge. That is why even Ngugi Wa Thiong'o says, do not keep giving the West this knowledge that they want by translating all the works from the colonized cultures. Why are you empowering them with more knowledge of your culture? That is what he asks. And so therefore, post-colonialism is it probably truly enshrines the spirit of fairness and the idea of equal opportunity and for everyone to have a voice. It is truly pluralistic. It is truly pluralistic. Sorry, I have to scroll down. Yeah. So can you see the screen there? It is truly pluralistic with emphasis on literatures. Right? That is one interesting thing. Earlier, prior to post-structuralism, literature with a capital L was one integral whole, and there was only great literature. But now, with the opening up of minds and opening up of approaches and celebration of other voices, we refer to them as literatures. All right. So this paradigm shift from literature to literatures, and interestingly, there are Englishes also. So Creole is also celebrated. I do remember reading a book in which the writer, she writes in standard English, all right, and she also writes in Creole. Creole. She belongs to one of the islander nations in the Pacific, South Pacific. And so she uses the kind of hybrid language. So the Creole is like partly English. It sounds like English, but it is their home language. It's a kind of English they speak on the island. So there are Englishes, okay, and we also have Indian English. Post-colonialism is in essence a liberating intellectual engagement. So I'll probably take you to those places of the text which I didn't show. I probably come only up to decolonizing discourse. Well, I spoke about it walking hand in hand with post-structuralism, empowers the other, right? The other is the person on the margins. The other would be Dalit people, for instance, in the Indian situation who are colonized uh, by upper classes. And then celebration of silence, absence, and making silence and absence a presence. So I think this for the first PG students might be a little bombardment on the mind, but I request you to keep this poem safely and go back to the poem and try to get familiar with all the terms that are there in it, and enrich your idea of your knowledge of post-colonialism. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Mayapurthi ma'am. It's very interesting to listen to all the synchronizing blend of different aspects of post-colonialism. Thank you. Now, may I request Madam to review these sessions?
Yeah.
Good.
Good afternoon. Am I audible?
Yes, ma'am. Yes.
Okay, super. So thank you, Balambigai ma'am and Sadhana ma'am and Maria Preeti ma'am for a very comprehensive sort of description of culture studies, Indian writing in English, Indian writing in translation, and post-colonial studies as well. So I have the tough job of trying to tie up everything towards the end. So one thing I'd like to probably start out with is that because like Maria Preeti ma'am was saying, we're bombarded with all the terminology and the words. We might find this very overwhelming. So what is hybridity, assimilation, and absent, present, silence? All of these are really, as terminology, they might be tough. But at the end of the day, these are realities that are very, very important to us in our life, in our day-to-day experiences. And post-colonialism, culture studies, and Indian English, whether English or in translation, are equally important to us in our day-to-day lives. For example, if we take this idea of English, there is a certain prestige, there is a certain importance that is given to the language, right? So many of us choose to study English over some other language. But today, at least in academics, the attempt is to break down that importance that is given to the English language, right? So is English, we should start seeing English as just another language that is used for communication. Now, when we're talking about translation, Sadhana ma'am was telling us about how people used to use translation, either for administrative purposes or to translate texts and so on. But today, translation is an almost day-to-day activity. For example, if any of you watch, Netflix or Amazon Prime or Hotstar or something, you have the option of immediately putting a subtitle. That is also an act of translation. Now, for some movies, very interestingly, I think Pavakadegal did this. They had a translation in Tamil on Netflix. Okay, and that's a very big deal, right? So, this idea of translation is a part of our day to day lives. Okay, so when we talk about uh, Indian writing in English and Indian writing in translation, initially, there has been a division between the two, right? That you read only English, writers who wrote in English, or even today, writers who write in English, or you read a translation of a writer who has written in a regional language, which you are then reading in English, right? Now, one very interesting thing that Stella did, like the department I'm in, is to combine the two and to say that actually we are only looking at the stories, we're not looking at the politics of the translation. That means we are not focusing on why why is the story written in English, what is the difficulty or the similarity, but we're reading both the texts together. So that means we're looking at the story. Now, this leads me to tell you a little on what culture studies, the aim of culture studies is itself, and therefore linking Indian English to culture studies and post-colonialism is that traditionally, now when you go to the 1700s, 1800s in Europe, and you look at the way in which they used to analyze texts, they used to analyze it based on the aesthetics. Okay, so you might have read so when you look at especially somebody like Dr. Samuel Johnson, or others who critiqued, say, even a writer like Shakespeare, they'll say, oh, but his language is not that great. Oh, but he didn't follow the structure of the usual play. He broke the structure. Broke the timing. Okay, he didn't follow the rules. The focus was on the rules, the structure, on how things were written, the way in which everything is either following a certain pattern, or the language, whether the language is correct or not, right? But culture studies, like Balambika Imam was saying, broke all of that, right? So now you can say, why should I follow your structure? So when Maria Preeti ma'am was talking about Creole and these other languages, I was immediately reminded of this phenomenon that happened about a few years ago when Anirudh and Dhanush's Why This Kolaveri came out, right? It was an absolutely different moment for uh, for Tamil itself. But it wasn't Tamil, it was actually English. So, people who spoke English said, no, this cannot be English. This must be a different language, right? So that is the politics of culture studies. It can be relevant to us in our everyday, day-to-day basis, right? So a song like that, Why This Kolaveri was preceded by a couple of others who did, mix English with Tamil, but today it's become a phenomenon, right? Like now you'll see that even, like maybe dialogue, songs, there's a lot more English in Tamil, and there's a combination of the two languages. And this is a cultural phenomenon. Now, because of this, culture studies can no longer be treated as something we study in a department. In fact, even when Raymond Williams and Stuart Hall, the two people that, a couple of others also that Balambika Imam was talking about, when these people started by talking about culture studies, they said culture studies isn't, you sit in a department and you study it and you learn by heart the concepts and you write it in an examination. That's not the purpose of culture studies. The purpose of culture studies is to look at everyday problems in our life, in the world around us, and analyze it. So it could be, now you could read So you can analyze not only movies, books, and so on. You can analyze Instagram posts, you can analyze memes, you can analyze even fashion culture, you can analyze songs, you can analyze dance, movement and dance patterns, you can analyze accents, you can analyze hairstyles. Anything is a text, right? Ma'am was talking about the word text. A text is basically something which you can analyze, right? For example, if you take your this notion of you should dress in a particular way, right? But there are different cultural practices that have different attires. So if you analyze the cultural politics of dresses, you'll understand that there is a politics amongst people, that there is an hierarchy amongst people. Okay, so that is basically what culture studies does. It takes anything and everything that we have in and around us, right? It could be our food, it could be accessories, it could be anything that we use, and how that is a part and parcel of our culture. However, one of the problems of culture studies became that there was a movement towards institutionalization, and we tend to study it and theorize it. And for our net purposes, that is important. So we, have to keep that in mind. But the focus and the essence of culture studies is rooted in our day-to-day lives. Okay. uh, because of this, literature is no longer pedestalized. So when we join now, studying English literature in colleges has gone through a huge transition. So at one point in time, people used to say, oh, English literature, wow, wonderful. Then it came to a point where, oh, English literature, no, why are you not studying, say, engineering or medicine? Right? There is a politics to studying English literature, but definitely studying English literature is considered better than studying, say, literature in your regional languages. There is a politics there. And and poetry and drama alone, but it's anything. Okay, so it can be articles, like I said, it can be an Instagram post, it can be a meme, it can be anything. All of that is also considered as literature. Now, in terms of post-colonialism, one thing that ma'am was talking about is the link between knowledge and power. And this is something that has now, why is this knowledge very important? Why is going through a grade 1 to grade 12 and then college and then MA, and then why is this an important process? Is because it gives you the power to, so you have to first understand the structure in order to fight the structure. And probably no one says it better than Ambedkar, when he says educate, agitate, and organize, right? It's the same thing. It's just put in a different context when you say post-colonialism. Now, that is basically it, that you learn English in order to fight against the power structures of English. Okay, and when ma'am was saying that we translate, why is it that we want to translate our works into English, but we should also translate their works into our regional languages? That is important, yes, but that also has a politics. And instead of translating English into our regional languages, we should start thinking about translating other languages without the support of English into our regional languages. Now, that is the movement of subalternity. Now, there is a very slight difference between post-colonialism and subalternity, because when you talk about post-colonialism, it's clearly the colonized countries versus the colonizer, right? So in the case of India, it's India versus primarily Britain. But when we talk about subalternity, we recognize that even within India, there's no single culture, there's no single narrative, it's not just one person there. So we should be able to analyze the dynamics, the power relations, and the problems in India itself. This sort of dialogue happens between, so ma'am was saying you have Spivak's Can the Subaltern Speak? So Spivak is a proponent of post-colonialism, and there is another writer, I mean, there are many others, but one of whom is this person called Kancha Ilaya, who questions her itself. He says, no, you're talking about India versus the colonizer, but you should recognize that in India itself, there are these huge dynamics. So he points out that difference between post-colonial and the subaltern, right? So all of this relates to and is very specific to our lives in our day-to-day world, the world that we live in. It's very relevant to our context and our situatedness in a country like India, especially with its, politics, with its cultural representations and all of that. So we should keep that in mind when we talk about all these three fields: post-colonialism, culture studies, and Indian English in translation. Thank you all three of you for this wonderful opportunity. But before I wind up, do we open up for questions?
Yes, questions or feedback?
Would anyone like to respond?
Hello.
This is a very phenomenal review, and it is a pleasure listening to your analytic critical outlook, ma'am. Thank you so much.
Hello, good evening, ma'am.
Thank you, ma'am. Yeah. Yes, sir, Mr. Ramakrishnan, I think.
Yeah. It is nothing regarding your review, man. It was done excellently. But I would like to correct certain factual errors, which I found in that translation about Ms. Sadhana, ma'am, has presented. Okay, something about
Yes,
the
sir.
translation and Indian writing in English. Sorry, translation in English. So during that course of her lecture, she referred to Rubaiyat as written by Bharatidasan. That's far from truth. The truth is, it was actually translated by Kavimani Devika Vinayagam Pillai. It was he who translated Rubaiyat into Tamil. And particular clipping.
I'm sorry, sir.
No problem, ma'am, no problem. The particular clipping you showed, that song actually figured in a movie called Kalvanin Kadali. Actually, that particular song in film was actually cinematographed on Shivaji Ganesan and Bhanumati. Okay, it is available on YouTube also. Music was composed by, I think, G. Ramanathan. Okay, that one. And the second one, you have also mentioned that Scott Fitzgerald was a British man. No, he was an American. So he was an American. He has nothing to do with the British colonialism and things like that. So he was a downright American. The second thing. And the third thing is regarding Macaulay and this gentleman.
It was not Scott Fitzgerald, sir. It was Edward Fitzgerald, which I mentioned. Sorry to disturb you.
But Rubaiyat was translated by Scott Fitzgerald.
No, Edward.
No, it was translated by Edward Fitzgerald.
Which one?
So the
Rubaiyat
was translated by Edward Fitzgerald, an English poet.
Yeah, Edward Fitzgerald.
Yeah, but it was translated into Tamil by Kavimani, that I agree.
Yeah,
but,
okay. I got this.
Edward Fitzgerald only translated into English.
In Tamil, it was translated by Kavimani Desivanayagam Pillai. And one more thing, ma'am.
Yeah, that I agree.
She should not have mentioned. He should not have mentioned that Eastern traditions might have lacked that scientific temper, because in the very introduction to Rubaiyat, he mentioned the fact that the original Umar Khayyam was a mathematician as well as an astronomer. Okay, and during that particular introduction, he mentioned the scientific temperament that could be seen and found in Umar Khayyam. So regarding Macaulay, there is no second opinion. Okay, there is no difference of opinion. I have also put something in chat column. Even though I like that man Macaulay for his
No,
knowledge.
Macaulay said the Persian was sorry to
Yeah,
interrupt.
Macaulay. That's why I said.
Macaulay said
No, I
Persian
know Macaulay. See,
yeah, but Fitzgerald didn't say that he was lacking in scientific temperament, because we know Omar Khayyam was he was this particular Persian poet was an astronomer too. But
And
here,
a fan of
I was talking about Persian man's. Sorry, I was talking about. Fitzgerald's opinion about the Persian language, that it was lacking in aesthetic beauty.
No, yeah, that is
what he
there.
had,
That is there.
mentioned
But
about,
whatever be his ideas, it is very difficult to translate the sounds. Okay, you can try to translate. That's why the translation of Quran into other languages are prohibited by Islamic scholars, because you can translate the meaning, but you cannot translate the sound, because in most of the Arabic words, Eastern languages, sound plays a significant role in determining the meaning. So that could never be properly understood by a Westerner. So that is one thing, ma'am. And regarding Preeti ma'am's, during her conversation, she requested the community of scholars, the teachers, to present translations from the Western classics into Tamil. Okay, that has been taking place, but quite slowly, because actually I keep my camera open. May I show you? If you pin my video there, I would like to show you this particular book. Is it visible?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yeah, this particular book is called Kobathin Kanigal. Okay, actually it is a translation of Grapes of Wrath. Grapes of Wrath is translated, that is Sternberg's Grapes of Wrath is translated into Tamil as Kobathin Kanigal by one Mr. Ramesh. Interestingly, he is not a professor. He is working in accounts department at Chennai. He has already done several translations. And in fact, he gave this book to me to write a review for that particular book in English. See, it is there. Okay, most of the time we think that translations are going from vernacular to English. The other way around is also taking place. But unfortunately, most of the professors in the academics, the college teachers and professors, they never indulge in that. I think it is a luxury for them. It is the people who are working elsewhere other than academics, like bank staff, LIC staff members, and people like them. They translate many things from English into Tamil. So we need to take cognizance of that fact, because as scholars of English, we need to verify whether these translations originally reproduce and whether they are faithful to the original in English. Otherwise, those people who entirely depend on Tamil translations may sometimes construe these books to be the original meaning intended by the author. See, as Preeti has pointed out for me to coming out with some of my observation.
Thank you, sir.
All of you have done a very wonderful work. And I also take this opportunity to request the students to take all these things into their brain and try to go after them one by one patiently, so that they will be in for good academic years ahead. Okay.
Yeah, thank you, sir. I would just like to know if there are any students who have any questions. Maybe one or two we can take. Maria Preeti, ma'am.
Students, any questions? You can text your questions if you don't feel like speaking up. I think they've had a long day, madam, so drained brains, perhaps. Battery low, maybe, because with overcharging them and bombarding them with too many things, probably. I think, but I'm sure they would have assimilated a lot that you have shared. I think Sumati has, some students have contacted Sumati
Yeah,
to.
I contacted. They told that they would sure give their review.
Okay.
Deepika, Rukmani?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, they're here.
Good, good afternoon, ma'am, and good afternoon, everyone. It's my privilege to give feedback on these multipurpose lectures, which was done by eminent persons. And we are also blessed to have such professors to guide us. The overall session was an eye-opener for everyone. Though it was new for us, it will be very, very much useful. It also kindles us to learn literature more with thorough enjoyment. The things which we learned today will stick in our minds forever because of the way you made the lectures was very interesting. And I also request our beloved professors and other resource persons to help us by making these type of orientation program in future also. Finally, I thank everyone for helping us to expand our knowledge in various branches of literature. That's it, ma'am. Thank you.
Thank you, Deepika.
Thank you,
It's
ma'am.
very heartwarming. It gives us a sense of satisfaction.
Thank you, ma'am.
Good afternoon, ma'am. Good afternoon, ma'am.
Yes, Rukmani. Yeah.
I feel very happy to attend this wonderful sections. From attending this section, I understood that literature is not something what we study in textbooks. So, Sir said we should not study for mark or grade. So, we should understand and we should analyze what we are studying. So, at last, ma'am also said, from that I understand that literature is nothing but is just a reflection of life. So we can see that influence of literature in everywhere. So I feel very happy to attend this section, and thank you so much for sharing my feelings towards this section. And I would also say something more about our lectures especially. So I feel astonished. I wonder, actually I am from another town. I'm apart from Chennai. So the persons like me who visit Chennai for the first time, who face new environment, have some little fear and hesitation how to face Chennai life and how to face the new college. But here I feel very much happy and satisfied after I joined in Queen Mary's College, because lectures are here are so friendly and they are so modest, they are so humble. They clear and clarify all our doubts. That I like that friendliness they have with us. They clear and clarify our doubts. They help us with the seminars. So I feel very much happy to be a part of the organization. I hope to meet all our lectures in person soon and enrich my knowledge in the field of literature. That's it, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am. Thank you all for this wonderful opportunity.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Rukmani. We are there for you. So anything you can reach out to us and we'll reach out to you. Thank you.
Sure, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am.
May I request Professor Vasigimam to give a vote of thanks?
Yeah. Thank you, ma'am. A pleasant good afternoon to one and all. Respected Principal, ma'am, Dr. Uma Maheshwari, our most distinguished guest of the day, Dr. Ramakrishnan sir, Dr. Sivaraman sir, and Dr. Sayuja, our beloved HOD, Dr. Maria Preeti Srinivasan, Honorable Professor, and dear students. I deem it a great honor to propose the vote of thanks to all those who have helped in making the orientation program successful. On behalf of everyone, first of all, I spread my most sincere thanks to the Lord for blessing us in organizing the orientation program for first year students. I extend my gratitude to our Honorable Principal Ma'am for giving her consent and support in conducting the program. Further, my sincere thanks to the mastermind and architect of the program, who is none other than my beloved head of the department, Dr. Maria Preeti Srinivasan, who always has a concern to enhance the knowledge of the students by organizing seminars and workshops and so on. And today's program is a perfect example. Next, I owe my sincere thanks to Dr. Sivaraman sir, who chaired two sessions, session 1 and session 2. The first session on the net and set goals, and the second one, new vistas for research in English studies. Sir gave a wonderful inputs on the topics. He said that take your subjects and courses seriously. That is very important. Read history of English literature. These are the key points which I have noted down, which I could share with my students, and I'm doing so. So I feel this has to be again repeated so that students should not forget. And sir also enhanced and repeated the point like students have lost the practice of taking notes and note making, which is also very, very important. Since it is an online class now, because of COVID, we are not able to meet students personally. We don't know what is happening the other side. So it has to like students should make it as a practice of taking notes and making important points when the lecture is going on. So for this, if you start doing right from now, it's not necessary that you have to go for any kind of special coaching or anything like that. So you will as this advice is given regarding how to crack the net and set goal set examination if you're going to face. So he says that read the subject thoroughly. Definitely you will crack any number of exams which you face, the challenges which comes before you. So preparation which has to be taken seriously. If you do anything with seriousness added with your dedication, definitely you could able to clear any number of exams. So that was what sir told in regard to the preparation of exams, especially net and set, where people have to take care in future if they are taking teaching as a profession. Then I extend my gratitude to Dr. Sayuja ma'am, who has come all the way, who is there on the online, and she has chaired the session on the new vistas for research in English studies. And ma'am has given her points on Indian writing in English and translation studies, and she also spoke on cultural studies and post-colonialism. So these are the topics on which ma'am has highlighted on, and her point is on ideas of translation
இது
in
முடியும்
day-to-day.
கல்டாறது முடிய போறது.
Ideas
நான்
of
தூங்காம உட்கார்ந்திருக்கேன். ஆனா வலிச்சுதுன்னா பொறுத்துக்கணும் அங்க போய்.
வலிச்சாதான் போட முடியும். எப்படி அப்புறம் எப்படி வலிக்காம எப்படி இருக்கும்?
Idea of translation.
தூங்கலாடி அவள்லாம்.
Sorry sir.
நாளை காலத்து.
Idea of translation in day-to-day life, and ma'am has also pointed about the politics of translation, which how it has been looked at, how it has to be analyzed based on aesthetics. And ma'am also spoke on cultural studies and how it has to be analyzed with the day-to-day problems, music and knowledge. And in regard to post-colonialism, ma'am spoke on why knowledge and power is important, how it is being looked at. And ma'am also spoke on subaltern studies, and she gave an overview of all these concepts. I extend my sincere thanks to Dr. Ramakrishnan sir for giving his presidential address and also his valuable information on how one should be committed towards their deeds. And ma'am, sir also highlighted on the point that we have to read more of classics, and he introduced many expressions. And sir advised the students that we have to have analytical reading, and if we do like that, our memory would be sharpened, and we have to develop the skill of memory also, remembering things. And he quoted and framed many examples in support to his topic. And he also highlighted on how we should have patience and perseverance, which will lead to greater heights. So all these are some of the key points which we have to keep in mind, especially the students. It's mainly meant for the students. It's orientation for first PG. So you're stepping into the next level of degree. So I hope the points given by the staff resource persons as well as the chairpersons will definitely help you out. And I don't want to miss some of the points here. Dr. Sivaraman sir has included regarding when he was making an overview review about on the topic like gender studies, eco-criticism and ELT. He said that research, if we are doing any research or project, we have to focus more towards the text rather than theory. So this is a point, which key point which you have to remember, where we generally try to stick on to theory. First, we try to search for theory and then try to apply on the text. So this should be avoided. And he has also supported his ideas with various examples and how you can make yourself make a meaningful research. So all these points our chairperson shared with us. I'd like to place my hearty thanks to all the resource persons who came forward and did a wonderful presentation. Right from session 1, we have Miss Sangeeta and Mrs. Naseem, who gave a beautiful presentation on how to crack net and set exams. And they highlighted on how we have to be very focused, and we have to give importance to all the papers, first paper, second paper, extensive reading. So this is actually, I'm encapsulating everything in brief so that none of the points should be missed out when the students are leaving from this session. So, and she also highlighted on like how we have to follow the chronological order. So how we generally miss, we don't follow the chronological order for our studies. So this is very important, she highlighted. And in session 2, we had Dr. Vinita, Mrs. Sumati ma'am, Mrs. Angeline Fernando. Vinita spoke on gender studies, and she said what is gender and aspects of gender. And she spoke on waves of feminism. And she also said that how education is very important for every girl child. And she highlighted on the broader areas of research also. I owe my thanks to the resource persons of all the sessions. And then Mrs. Sumati ma'am also spoke on eco-criticism and how man, she spoke about how man is the cause of disfiguring the nature, how we have to preserve our nature. She has, she has given us the idea. And she also spoke on the waves of eco-criticism and some of the emerging concepts of eco-criticism. Mrs. Angeline Fernando, she spoke on ELT. She gave a very beautiful explanation of what ELT is. She said it is to explore, experiment, and elevate. And she said that it is love of language and training and teaching. So we have to have an effective way of teaching. We can step up with new ideas in order to make students learn the language well. And in section C and section 3rd, we had Bala Migai ma'am with who spoke on cultural studies, and Dr. Sadhana on Indian writing in English and translation. And Dr. Maria Preeti ma'am spoke on post-colonialism. Bala Migai ma'am also spoke on aspects of cultural studies, and she also highlighted the pioneers of cultural studies. And she also spoke on subjectivity and power. So all these are there in the subject. We have to have a detailed study of it. And Sadhana also spoke on what do you call, the foundation of ILET, which has led to how the translation, it should not be like only from English to our from vernacular to English translation is should not be primal criteria. From English to vernacular should also, we should give importance to. Translation should take place in that way also. And Maria Preeti ma'am had a wonderful explanation about post-colonialism with a poem. She could able to bring in the entire idea. It's like bringing in the entire gamut. So all the terminologies which are existing in post-colonialism, resistance, struggle, and ma'am has quoted Bill Ashcroft also, and she has highlighted about empire rights back, which plays a very vital role. And ma'am spoke on hybridity and multiculturalism. So which in a poem in nutshell, ma'am has brought everything in a single poem about the concept and the theory, everything. So I thank all the resource persons for that. Further, a big thanks to Mrs. Sumati ma'am for hosting the program wonderfully. And last but not least, our beloved students for their active participation in the process of learning. And I'm also thankful to the entire English department for their cooperation and support for making this program a wonderful and successful one. Hope this program will serve as an eye-opener to the students from unknown to known facts. So with this, a very long vote of thanks, I take permission to leave. Thank you so much, ma'am.
Thank you so much, Vasai, for the enormous critical account of the session.
Thank you, ma'am.
Now, yes,
my heartfelt thanks, Vasuki, for this very panoramic vision that you gave us through the vote of thanks.
Thank you so much.
For your involvement,
Thank you
for being in this program from the morning.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
That is very nice of you to be with us whole day.
Thank you so much, ma'am. Thank you for the opportunity, ma'am.
Yeah.
Shall we?
Wait, I'll pause the recording. And,
shall we close?
Okay, thank you, Sumati. It was a very tough act for you to be organizing secretary as well as resource person, but you handled it very well. You have had a stressful day, I understand. So thank you.
Thank you so much. It's a pleasure and a nice opportunity also for me. Thank you for that. And then now, shall we close with the national anthem?
Okay.
शुभ नामे जागे तब शुभ आशीष मांगे गाहे तब जय गाथा जय गण मंगल दायक जय हे भारत भाग्य विधाता जय हे जय हे जय हे जय 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 हे
Shall we? Shall we wind up? Shall we wind up the session?
Yes, we'll wind up.
Thank you. Thank you all.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you all.